This is a direct result of government intervention again. So I released a video literally talking about this today. So they're talking about taxing bedrooms, right? This is a harebrained idea that's come out of cotality. So cotality.
Before you go into that.
Okay, sorry, yep.
Before you go into that, a lot of people think that's going to happen. That's not. We just need to, just so you know, correct. Guys, there's no way they're doing it.
Yeah. And I talk about this in the video. The purpose of that scare campaign is not so that they can get a bedroom tax. It's so that what they do propose, which is probably land tax, we all accept with enthusiasm because it seems good in comparison, right?
Yeah.
That's the opening gambit to make us grateful for something that's actually really bad for us, but it's not as bad. Anyway, so this came out of it was a thought bubble from a thing called cotality. They used to be known as Core Logic. For those that are in the real estate industry, you'll know who they are. They basically do house valuations. When you go to the bank and you ask for a loan on your home and they have to decide how much it's worth, Core Logic, now Cotality, is one of the places they turn to get all that sort of data. So they've got a lot of data. But this particular idea, basically what they're saying is most homes only have 2 people in them, 1 to 3 people in them. Most homes have 3 or 4 bedrooms, therefore there's bedrooms going to waste. Well, a couple of things. Firstly, none of your damn business, right? If I've paid for it, and let's not forget, so I've done the numbers on this, I've done multiple videos on this. By the time someone has paid off their house, they have paid in tax whatever it was that they paid for the house. If you buy a $1 million house now at, let's say, a 90% LVR, so 90% loan on that, then you have to pay that with after-tax income. So over the next 30 years, while you pay off that loan, all the money that goes into the principal and all the money that goes into the interest on that loan is after-tax money. And by the time you've paid off that loan, you will have given the government $1 million or more in tax. To pay off the house that cost you $1 million. So when someone's sitting there debt-free on a 4-bedroom house that cost them, $500,000, however long ago when they bought it, they have spent $500,000 in taxes to own that house. And now some young punk economist wants to come along and say, oh, you shouldn't own that. You haven't paid enough tax. We're going to tax you on that. None of your damn business, government. But secondly, houses have 4 and 5 bedrooms for the same reason that cars have 5, 6, 7, 8 seats, even though normally there's only one person in it, okay? It's because the fixed costs of building a house have very little to do with the number of bedrooms going in. So, and bedroom might add 5% to the floor area of the house, but it doesn't add 5% to the cost of building the house. It adds a fraction of that amount of money, but it adds a lot to the resale value. So when you build a car, that car has to be properly engineered, properly designed. It has to pass all the safety tests, the emissions tests, has to get, it needs the wheels and the tires and the paint job and the dealer network, and all that stuff has to happen. And that has to happen regardless of the size of the car. A 2-seater sports car needs all of that, just like an 8-seater minivan needs all of that. It's the same with houses. There are a bunch of fixed costs. This thing has to be designed and engineered. It has to get through environmental approvals, has to get the energy efficiency study done. All this stuff, that doesn't really change much, if at all, based on the size of the house. So what's the incentive for a developer? They have to pay all these fixed costs, all these government fees, the application fees and this and that, and go through this whole process. Their incentive is to build the biggest chock-a-block house they can on the smallest possible pieces of land. And there's no margin left for them to do anything else. Their margins now are so thin on land developing, they're not going to leave any money on the table. They're not going to do anything other than cram the biggest thing they possibly can. Now, these days, you can get a 400 square meter block. You can fit a 4-bedroom house on that, single story. And I know that because I lived in one. I rented one out in Office, a beautiful home, actually. 4-bedroom house on a 400 square meter block of land. That is what developers have to do to make money now. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? If the only houses available to you are 4 bedrooms. Yeah. No one's selling 3-bedroom houses anymore. No one wants apartments if you've got kids or if you've got any kind of, if you just enjoy outdoors or whatever. If you want a building on land, there's no 2-bedroom units. There's no little humble brick units like what they built in the 60s. You mentioned those earlier, 3 to a block, 4 to a block. That doesn't exist anymore. You have to get a 4-bedroom home. We have to do that because the government has made it uneconomic for builders to build anything other than the biggest damn home they can squeeze onto that block of land. Now the government turns around and says, oh, you bought more bedrooms than you needed. Yeah, of course I did. What else am I going to buy? There's nothing else on the market. Yeah. If I'm a single guy going to buy a house, my options are 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms. Those are my options. And the government made it that way. And now they're going to turn around and say, you've bought too many bedrooms? Come on.
Well, the whole thing is when you look at what's available, there is nothing available, and what they're building is not fit for purpose anyway. So I talked about that little townhouse. The only people that would be willing to live in that property are people who aren't accustomed to an Australian way of life. These houses, like unconfirmed, my own opinion, are being built for the internationals. They are so small that one of the houses we looked at, there was no way you could even get a couch, not a big couch, a small 2-seater couch. There was nowhere for it to go, and I'm looking at it going, this actually isn't livable. The only people that could live in this are 4 housemates who would live in their bedroom and come down occasionally to cook a bit of food. That's it. There's no communal area.
It's flat sharing. It's flat sharing is what it is.
100%. And so I've lived in Bayside, Melbourne I moved up here 2014, right? So I have seen this area be gentrified in front of me. It started with Bentley, now Cheltenham, that whole area, Hyatt, Hampton. And when I first moved here, I've always lived in units when I've been up in Melbourne. So I've always lived in like one of those, 4 in a block, 2-bedroom, relatively nice, perfect for one person. And I'm happy with that. When I moved in with G, we wanted a bit more space, but the option was either a 3-bedroom itty bitty house and compete with 50 other couples, or we ended up buying one of those big bloody estate houses with 5 bedrooms. We don't need it, but there was no option in between. And you pay that little bit more, and then you're not competing with all these other couples. But as in the last 10 years that I've lived up here and watched this area be gentrified, like I said, they were one house on this big block, beautiful gardens, beautiful big backyards, all being knocked down. And I don't know what you call them. I guess maybe like a condo or something. They're not quite apartments. They're 3 levels with maybe 20 like townhousey units built together, and they share a hallway essentially and an undercover car park. And there is no space. They're not fit for purpose. And yet, they'll put some nice finishings on it and be like, oh, wow, it's luxury living. When did we accept that? When did Australia vote for yes? This is the other thing that blows my mind. And, this is a sweeping statement, and maybe you can talk to this. But as a country, we have, the 6th biggest landmass? We have a whole continent. Mm-hmm. And yet we are choosing to live on top of each other in like a 50-kilometer radius, and we're buying homes for $3, $4, $5 million. It makes no sense to me.
Yes, we don't have a market in very many things at all in this country. So what people confuse ownership with control. And they say, well, because you own your home privately, that therefore means it's a private market. And so if home ownership is failing, it's a failure of the private market. Well, ownership is one thing, control is another. Governments don't have to own something to control it. They can regulate it. So they can turn around and say, well, if you want to subdivide, here's the minimum block size. Also, by the way, it's going to take you 2 years to get through council, and we're going to impose all these other fees on you. We're going to make you jump through all these other hoops. If you want to build a house, a report came across my desk recently. I didn't do a video on it. There's something like 86 conditions on a normal suburban house. So a builder comes along, goes through council, jumps through all the hoops. They have 86 specific conditions applied by the council to that particular build, this single individual house that they're going to build on this block of land. And you say, well, not only does every single one of those conditions add to the construction cost because they have to monitor their own compliance, many of them add to the construction cost because they have to do more or do something in a more complicated way. Or it reduces profits because, for example, it might reduce how big the footprint can be or have some other impact like that. In addition...
Sorry, our comments are funny, so I have to share them.
Okay. In addition to that, we are all paying for all those bureaucrats that sat down and thought up all 86 of those conditions to then get applied to that private block of land. So we're all paying for it through the process, through our taxes. Then the developer is paying for it through lost profitability, and the buyer is paying for it through higher prices, and also the house just not being as optimized and as optimal as what it could be. And then the government has the hide to come along and say, well, isn't it good we have building standards in this country? And they point to things like the shoddy construction work that's being done. And they're like, well, that's why we have building standards. And I turn around and go, well, you're not doing a very good job of enforcing them, are you? Like, if government, if you're going to come along and take an enormous amount of my money and your money and everyone else's money and micromanage our lives had better be freaking amazing. You don't have, there is no justification for you sitting there saying the government will protect you from crime. Oh, but crime is out of control. No. Whoa. We gave you the money. You took all that power. You said you were going to do it. There is no room for failure. There is no room for failure in the housing market. The government has regulated this industry to within an inch of its life. If it is failing, it is not a free market failure. It is a failure of government. It is a failure of their regulation. And this is what concerns me about Claire O'Neill, the housing minister, turning around and saying, oh, we're not going to simplify the code. The symptoms of failure are all around us. This is no secret. We're all talking about the fact that the housing market is failing. It's not the private market that's failing. It is this ridiculously micromanaged, overregulated thing that we call a market that is failing. The government has acknowledged that it's failing. Claire has admitted that it's too complicated. But what's her answer? Oh, we won't make it more complicated for 4 years, we promise. Pinky swear. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this clip from The Oddcast. You can find our full episodes over on YouTube at The Oddcast HQ. We'll see you over there. Make sure you like, subscribe, and get in the comments.